Welcome to the Not Just a Pony Ride podcast, presented to you by Hetra University. If you've landed here, you're probably passionate about how horses help people. Whether you're an instructor, therapist, in the business, or have experienced equine assisted services yourself, we're glad you're here. Join us as we talk about the benefits, the science, to-dos, how-tos, and all of the reasons why what we do is so much more than just a pony ride. And now, from the Hetra campus in Gretna, Nebraska, here's your host, occupational therapist, Katie King.
Hey everyone, and happy Mental Health Awareness Month. I'll be honest, Kelly reminded me of that literally in the middle of this episode, but what a better way to celebrate it than to have our own Kelly Baulisch, a licensed mental health practitioner, on today. She is one of the therapists that helps us co-facilitate at Hetra, and I just can't say enough about how valuable she's been to our team. Today, she is going to share some wonderful insights about self-regulation, and if you don't know what that is or you want to learn more, here is your episode. She is going to share lots of really valuable resources too, so find those in the show notes below, but also she shared some visual helpers with me today on our call. So head over to the Not Just a Pony Ride Facebook page to actually see those visual resources and learn more about the ones that she shared. Get your pen and paper ready because you'll need it. Enjoy. Welcome, Kelly. Thanks for stopping by.
Thank you for the invite.
Yeah, we're thrilled to have you on. So we love Kelly B. That's what we call her around the barn. She is our resident mental health gal, one of them, and she helps us tremendously in all areas of the arena with several of our participants. So Kelly, why don't you tell us a little bit about you and your background, and we'll get started.
Yeah. So my name is Kelly Baulisch. I am a fully licensed mental health practitioner and a licensed drug and alcohol counselor, licensed professional counselor in the state of Nebraska. I have been working within the field for about 18 years, but licensed for going on 13. And so I typically focus on the mental health services, substance use services with individuals of all ages. So children, youth, and adult services. I've had opportunities working in-home as well as outpatient, residential opportunities. And so I'm excited to be able to, work at Hetra and to be able to bring more mental health services to the individuals.
Yeah, you get to add the barn to one of those places that you've worked, which is different. Well, I'm excited to have you on today because we're going to talk about a topic that's really hot. I think, especially as we move through some things related to the pandemic, all kinds of things. Mental health is always on the forefront, but we're going to talk about self-regulation today. So we hear a lot about self-regulation or emotional regulation, and how do we help our participants be in tune with themselves and help themselves really to be successful. So we're going to dive into that today. But first, I wanted to share with our audience, we had a question on the Not Just a Pony Ride Facebook page. And because we have a mental health practitioner on today, Miss Kelly, I thought it would be a great question to ask you and put forth to our audience. So Terry posted on our Facebook page, and she was, this is paraphrased, but looking for ideas, some unmounted activities for a group with Parkinson's. So an 8 to 10 participants, and several of them are in wheelchairs. And she was looking for activities that are safe ideas to include human and horse interaction and connection for those that might have limited mobility. So this program is facilitated by a PATH ESMHL, she said, and it could include any activities like socialization, life skills, safety, vocational skills, fine motor, gross motor, all kinds of different things. But I thought we would just kind of brainstorm here for a minute for Terry and for our audience here on something that we might do for a group that had this type of need. So for me, I'll start. I posted and said, I love herd dynamics. So I don't know if anybody has ever really watched herd dynamics, but if you have a safe place where you can get a group of horses together that are pretty dynamic, like to interact with each other and communicate in their nonverbal way, and have a safe place for people to watch that interaction happen, it can be such a cool way to talk about communication and socialization and safety and having choices, because horses are live beings just like us, and they have all of those those things too. They can make their own choices and that kind of thing. So I love to watch herd dynamics, and you can do, observe it for a little while and then have a list of questions that you ask your participants that are watching and that sort of thing. And so just form some discussion. You can also do it with a video. So we've found some YouTube videos that are helpful that have herd dynamics, videos of herd dynamics. So you could do that kind of in a classroom setting too, if you don't have a safe place to watch that or an accessible place to watch that. So I think that's a cool activity that you can do. Kelly, do you have any other ideas on activities for this group?
Yeah, I think to go along with the herd dynamics, it would be a really nice place to start to kind of focus on verbal and nonverbal communication with the horse. And you can do this, from a wheelchair, and being able to just begin to enhance that human horse connection and that interaction. So you could start with just observing, the horse's posture, the behaviors, kind of in that safe place. You can form kind of discussion around that and be able to process what that looks like. And then being able to kind of tie that back to the participants about how, horses communicate and how humans communicate, and to be able to see the similarities and then also be able to identify the differences. And then to further enhance, that human horse connection, you could do some of those, have grooming opportunities, or even just a simple touch. And being able to kind of communicate with the horse and just talk to the horse, being able to tell the horse something positive or something, positive within your day already. The opportunity, just to connect, also, as if you would just have a conversation with another individual and see that horse reaction, and then being able to talk about that to enhance that even further, kind of having that touch. And you could bring in coping mechanisms. So how do we, while we're having kind of that connection with the horse, how do we tie in that communication within that coping mechanism? A simple one could be, while they're able to kind of touch the horse, doing some deep breathing, some positive affirmations in addition to that, and then being able to identify the individual's breath and how they're connecting that through the horse, and then being able to see, again, the similarities and differences based on practicing that positive coping mechanism. So that would be a start. And what we could also do is, based on this question, we could put together some additional ideas and being able to post it on the Facebook page as well.
Yeah, definitely. So I think it's interesting for me to watch horses. Even something as simple as like having one foot cocked while they're standing there, is communication, or what they're doing with their ears or their eyes. And you have to slow your own body and your own thinking down to focus on what the horse is doing. And I think for so many, especially, those that are affected by a disease or a disability like Parkinson's, it's important to have those positive affirmations and mindfulness and being in touch with your own body in order to stay well overall. Cool. Well, we had some other people chime in as well on the Facebook page. Someone said chair yoga with the horses present. Love that. I'm a yogi. If you haven't heard the Yoga for Equestrians podcast with Allison Curtis, it was fabulous. But anyway, I thank you for your question, Terry, first of all, if you're listening. And I encourage everyone to maybe go out and chime in. If you facilitate a Parkinson's group of your own, especially, come over and let us know what you do. We really just want to facilitate a group of professionals that help each other out. And we're just trying to further the work of our beautiful animals to help others. So find a safe place there to ask your own questions too. Anyway, so meanwhile, back at the ranch, we are talking about self-regulation today. Kelly, why don't you kick us off? What in the world do we mean when we're talking about self-regulation?
Absolutely. I first want to say I'm really excited to be able to have this discussion because May is Mental Health Awareness Month.
Oh my gosh, that's so exciting. We're kicking it off.
So this is a great segue into being able to focus on mental health. So self-regulation, it's really the ability to kind of understand, manage those behaviors, our reactions to things, as well as our emotions and feelings. So when we talk about this, like, why is this so important? That's always that question. We'll have parents of participants that'll come up and just kind of give that overall goal. I would love my child to be able to work on self-regulation, but that is such a broad goal. And so I'm being able to kind of pare that down, why is this so important? And then how do we begin doing that? And so when we really look at why self-regulation is important, especially for children, it opens up an opportunity to enhance the learning at home, at school, in public settings, because what it gives them the ability to really focus and to be able to listen to the information that it is, being learned in those environments.
I want to chime in really quick. One of my favorite graphics of all time has to do with sensory regulation. So it's a little bit different, but the emotional and self-regulation is right on board with that. But it's like a pyramid, right? And like at the tippy top of the pyramid is like being able to learn, and then it's like all of these layers of the foundation that need to be there in order for us to learn at the top. And at the very bottom, it's like managing yourself, and your emotions and your feelings. And if you can't do that, it is so hard to even participate in the things you want to do every day.
Right. And this goes, and so please keep in mind, like, as we're talking about self-regulation, typically you kind of see self-regulation really begin to start within kind of the toddler years all the way up into adulthood. But please keep in mind that every single person is different and everybody develops at different times kind of with this information. And so please know that it may work for one individual in one setting, but it may not necessarily work kind of the goal that you're focusing on for somebody else. And so we're going to give a lot of different techniques to be able to assist with being able to teach self-regulation to the participant and make sure you're keeping it individualized for their treatment.
Our goal today too is, we were just going to say is, not to make you experts in this field at all, but I think it's something that a lot of our participants bring to the table as, like you said, a goal that they'd like to work on. And so for us as therapists, or even as adaptive writing instructors, sidewalkers, literally anybody in the barn, like how can we help, contribute to these goals that the family has? Because ultimately that's always what we want to work on, right?
Absolutely. And another why is just assisting them in learning how to behave in what we would consider socially acceptable ways. And so how you start a session, you're not going to come in, and if you have some of those disruptive behaviors, because it could cause an unsafe situation, and with the focus, safety for the participant, for everybody else in the arena, as well as the horse. So learning how to behave in those acceptable ways, as well as in school situations, it could be home environments, and again, in public situations, being able to form relationships. That could be peer-to-peer relationships, that could be child to adult relationships, and what that entails, and then also really enhancing their independence.
Mm-hmm. Amen.
So that's our why of why this topic is so important when we focus on self-regulation. So what are some of those goals? So when you break it down, when a parent says, I want my child to focus on self-regulation, like, what does that mean?
What are some other things that parents might say? So I feel like sometimes parents who have been, in OT or in the school system or something might come to you and say self-regulation, but what are some other, maybe words they might use that also means I want to work on self-regulation?
So you may see a parent, when you're kind of interacting with them, when they're first coming into treatment, saying, my child can't focus. My child can't calm down. They're not able to follow my directions. I ask them repeatedly, to clean their room, and they don't clean their room. And so those are just some examples when we look at, okay, so there could be some opportunities to focus on that self-regulation. So what we really want to focus on is, being able to calm down in situations. Hopefully the end goal would be to independently calm down, without kind of those prompts and cues, to focus on tasks or refocus on tasks, if something does come up and kind of distracts them from their ability to focus, especially during sessions, which we know there's a lot of stimulation when you're in the arena working with horses and sidewalkers and therapists and horse leaders. There's a lot going on in session. It could also be when I ask them how they feel, they can't tell me. And so
they just
really
say, good.
Yeah. Okay. So really looking at how do we kind of recognize what we're feeling and put a name to it. So that way others can help support. And if being able to calm down, if it's, one of those emotions like anger, sadness, to be able to assist and just having that knowledge and being able to apply different coping mechanisms for every situation in the arena, outside of the arena, in school settings, and then being able to kind of handle all the information that's around through the different senses. So when we look at how can we kind of enhance, really kind of that sensory learning and assist with kind of comfortability with that. Getting along with others, building those connections is another big one. Controlling impulses.
Impulse control. That is a fun one.
Right? Problem solving. So things that you would, that the schools are able to kind of assist with this, but through self-regulation, we can also continue to kind of touch base on these things and really kind of enhance this in a different opportunity through that human-horse connection interaction. So those are
I feel like
some of the goals we might set.
Yeah. And horses are like inherently one of the best impulse control rewards because they're these huge animals that they don't judge us. They don't have anything to say to us, but we can use those things like rules, like, that might scare the horse, or we have to do this in order to ride, or we don't want to be too loud because of the horse, or, so that's like, you immediately almost see some pretty good impulse control just because they're so motivated by the animal. And then I think that's just a perfect opportunity to flex those muscles so that they can do it in the classroom or at home or whatever, it's a muscle, just like anything else. You have to practice using it in order for it to get easier. Right.
Absolutely. Well, and so when we look at what are some ways that we can help teach this? So in the barn, in the arena, those are always, additional questions like, how do we do this big goal? How do we help teach that? And one of the areas that I really like to kind of focus on at the start of a session is being able to clearly identify what are those expectations. So before they're even getting ready to start the session, being able to connect with that participant to identify what's going on, kind of what state are you coming into session, so that way we know exactly where we're starting, being able to go over every single week what that expectation is and being clear with that expectation. And then I always tie it to safety. So we want everybody to be safe when we're in the arena. And so really helping kind of teach and model. One specific thing that we do is like calming down. What does calming down look like? So before you enter the arena, being able to, your posture represents, that you're calm, your facial expressions. So if we know a child is, running around in their parent corral, we'll really do kind of some of those coping skills to be able to kind of calm, center, get their focus on being present in the arena for that session. And so really focusing on a lot of those wellness practices, as well as establishing those expectations from the start. And so when you're looking at just different wellness practices that you can kind of bring into some of this, is that there's nature is one that could bring so many therapeutic effects that we don't sometimes even consider. So if you've got an opportunity to have an indoor and an outdoor arena, those are different kind of outlets to be able to use nature as an additional learning guide.
I use, it's just interesting to me. Sometimes I do yoga outside, like in the grass or in the dirt. Sometimes I literally just sit in the dirt and like even just cover myself in dirt, which is weird, like your feet or whatever. And you hear the term grounding all the time, right? But I mean, literally physically ground yourself, like in the on the ground, in the dirt. Like nature is so grounding and centering.
Well, if let's say if you have an indoor arena, so you don't necessarily have the opportunity to have participants work outside, you can do some of that by having them recognize their posture. You're talking about that grounding. They can even take their feet and shift a little so they can feel kind of that dirt under them, or to be able to feel kind of the heaviness of standing on cement, what that would look like. And so you can do some of that in the indoor arena as well, to be able to enhance that connection prior to starting session. So there's a lot of different health and wellness things that you can do. It is always nice to be able to touch base on sleep hygiene as well, to make sure that participants are getting enough sleep, their nutrition as well. These are just things to keep in mind when we're talking about self-regulation, because all of that can impact a person's ability, to focus and to problem solve if they're not getting enough sleep and those healthy meals.
Even something as simple as checking in with mom or dad or the caregiver. How was today? How was school today? Or how, I usually, my go-to phrase is anything new or different. And, then that's an opportunity to open that conversation to both your participant and your caregivers, if they're present, to talk about some of that. Well, you know what, since you asked that, Jim didn't sleep at all last night or whatever. So then, that opens that very casually to, giving you more information.
And I like to be able to, in addition to that, I like to see if there's any changes with, if I know the participant takes medication, being able to see if we have any medication changes. And these don't have to be long interactions. They could be, just a few minutes that you're touching base, with parents or guardians before you kind of start that session. But it's nice to be able to kind of have that focus as well, if I know that they are taking medications.
This episode of the Not Just a Pony Ride podcast is sponsored in part by
Equiforce. Equiforce is a database that allows you to track every facet of your organization, from horse, donor, and volunteer management to scheduling, grant tracking, incident reports, and tracking participant progress too. This is not a one-size-fits-all setup. Instead, Equiforce personally works with you to learn how your facility functions and takes note of your specific terminology so that they can create a unique system to match the needs of your organization. And of course, Equiforce provides an ongoing training and support so that your database can grow with you. Visit them at www.equiforce.com. That's EQUI-FORCE.com.
This episode is also sponsored in part by
Wooden Horse Corporation and the Equisizer. The Equisizer is a handcrafted, non-motorized mechanical horse used by equine-assisted service programs worldwide. The Equisizer requires no electricity, tools, or maintenance and can be used indoors or out for evaluations, warm-ups, stretching, mounting, dismounting practice, and volunteer training, fear, and build confidence with students, clients, and volunteers. It can easily carry the weight of 2 adults, offering the unique option to ride tandemly. To learn more about the Equisizer, visit equisizer.com. That's EQUICIZER.com.
So another thing that you can do, which is one of my absolute favorites, I like using visual aids. So especially in sessions. One of my favorites, and I'm going to show you, my daughter actually made these. These are sensory bottles. So this goes along with being able to practice some of the coping mechanisms. Very simple to make, but nice and effective. And then the neat thing about sensory bottles is you've got the opportunity for what you can see in the bottle, as well as what you can touch on the outside of the bottle. So it brings in 2 of those senses, which is absolutely amazing. So how you could use something as simple as a sensory bottle in a writing session is, if, let's say, if you know a participant is, really maybe struggling with a little bit of anxiety that day, or just even some sadness, and you're really trying to have them utilize a coping mechanism, you can pull out your sensory bottle and you're going to tip. So this is one with just sparkles. You can see all those sparkles. And then what I like to tell participants is that we are going to practice some deep breathing until the sparkles settle. And so you can make sensory bottles that will allow the sparkles to settle within a minute, or it could take, a few minutes, but that way you have a very short period of time where you are focused, and you're also kind of working within the ability to have some of the distraction. So that way their focus is on the sparkles and going to the bottom of the bottle. And so while you're doing that, we're going to practice some deep breathing and continually kind of do that to calm.
I love sensory bottles so much. I've made so many with a lot of my participants. And if you're listening right now and want to know more about this, I'll have Kelly send me some pictures of them and maybe like the items that are in them. And we can kind of share what those look like, and how she made them. But one thing I like sensory bottles for are my kids that, or adults, my participants that I say, let's take a deep breath. And they go, I'm like, okay, let's try that again. So that is a good visual cue for them that like that one is not going to do it. We need to keep trying until those sparkles or, beads or whatever they are settle. And that's a good visual for them.
And you can, based on the liquid that you put in here, you can decide kind of on that time is like, I want to be able to work on a calm down for 1 minute. Then you could have like a 5-minute bottle. These are great tools also to be able to utilize at home instead of using possibly like a timeout, or if you have like a cozy corner where you can have your child go and do some deep breaths with their sensory bottle in that cozy corner. So that way they're distracted, but they have an opportunity to really apply those skills that they're learning. And you can see them doing that. So that is one sensory bottle. I'm going to show another one that then I'm going to relate to kind of some color psychology when we look at feelings. So here's another sensory bottle. It's got Legos in it.
Love that.
And so the nice thing about this type of sensory bottle, you can see some of those Legos floating around. Obviously the Legos settle a lot faster than some of the glitter. So I'll do more calming deep breaths with the glitter sensory bottles. And with these ones, it really gives an opportunity to, if you know some of that color psychology, to be able to work with your participant and identify what they may be feeling and start some of that emotional recognition. And so color psychology kind of shows us that if we're feeling happy, I'm going to focus on that yellow Lego and being able to find that yellow Lego. And then it could be a discussion about what are some things that make you happy or make you smile if they're struggling to understand what happy means. Then you can focus on blue, and color psychology tells us that blue represents sadness, and being able to identify, those things or those times that make you sad. And then that way they're focusing on this while they're participating in that discussion. Because what I have noticed sometimes with the younger individuals in session is that there's a lot of anxiety that comes in really making yourself vulnerable and being able to talk about emotions.
Geez Louise, even older populations. I mean, I have friends that are 30 years old that don't want to talk about their emotions or, anything. So, I mean, giving it something like that, like where it makes it easier to talk about, takes away some of that, barrier.
Right. So these two sensory bottles, completely different, but to utilize them in a different format to be able to begin practicing some of those self-regulation techniques.
Super cool. Kelly, are you going to get more in or touch just a little bit on some more of that color psychology? If you are, I'll wait to ask my question because I have a good question.
It was definitely, thing that I did want to touch on. Okay. So one of the things that I really focus on is the color psychology in session when we're doing kind of co-facilitation in a writing session. And it's nice because one of the things that I really use is I call it an emotional check-in with them at the start of session. And I do it based on some feeling spots. And I'm going to show one resource that I really like to be able to kind of work with, and it's easily represented. And so this also is close this example is a little spot of happiness. So this is Diane Alber, who really has worked with the social emotional kind of learning concepts and really kind of applying that color psychology. And so we, at the start of session, we will go through and I will ask the participant, hey, what feeling spot are you feeling today? And you can see this happiness guy, because yellow represents happiness. And the participant will go down. And if they can't necessarily verbalize what they're feeling, they can tell me yellow. And I know that yellow means that they're starting off session feeling happy. And we're good to go then to be able to get prepared for our writing session after we go over our expectations for session.
And what?
So if a participant,
what would you say? So like the color spots, I sometimes have difficulty transitioning that from, it works really well for the younger population. It's very easily read. And then for when we start to get into some of our more adult populations, I still feel like those colors are very helpful, but how do you kind of play that so that it doesn't feel so, like it's geared towards children?
Right. So I actually utilize kind of this same method in working with some of the older participants. And we initially kind of talk about that emotional check-in. So you could take it from, hey, I would just want you to have the ability to be able to communicate, with me with a few different methods, based on the color spots, but then being able to verbalize. So we'll start with the color spots. So that way, if they take a little bit more time to process, or if they're really struggling being able to identify those emotions, it's a good start for everybody to have the same communication and the consistency with what that communication is. And it allows them to feel comfortable. So you can use kind of this same method, but it doesn't have to have, the smiley faces or, anything like that, to be able to identify what those feelings are. And then with some the adult population, what we'll do is, depending on the different activity and writing session, that once I may say, hey, go find, if you're finding something yellow, then let's be able to tie that, to those things that really make you happy, or, and start that discussion that way, where they're able to provide more of that narrative in the session. And so we don't necessarily have the smileys though.
Right. And I think those colors translate so well to so many different activities, because colors are everywhere. So like rings or animals or beanie babies or whatever it is, you can look for that color and then talk about that emotion. And I feel like that's an easy way to tie in some of those things without just sitting down and talking about what makes you happy, It's an easy way to do that.
Well, and we, so just this week I had an opportunity with one of the participants where we used the larger Duplo box to be able to bring in those feelings. So knowing that this participant would present as a little bit more guarded, kind of shut down when I approach the conversation of, how do you feel today? Then being able to kind of jump in and use those Duplo box that are color focused to then be able to approach kind of a discussion. And it felt really comfortable because they enjoy using the Duplo box. So it was something they were already comfortable with. But then just kind of allowed an opportunity to have that discussion. So those are some techniques. Also, I just want to kind of give an additional resources. And so these are nice for younger kids as well as older kids. And so just like Diane Alber's feeling spots and really talking about the color psychology, there's also another good series. It's called Slumberkins. And so this one is by Kelly Loriard and Callie Christensen. So this is going to talk more about kind of our youth population and really increase the understanding and being able to comprehend feelings or situations that come up. So more of those difficult topics. What I really like about this series is that it's always associated with an animal. So kind of just like our human horse connection, this is also associated with an animal. And so Lynx is all about how we express ourselves. And then so always in this series, it then talks about, it ends with a positive affirmation. And so Lynx may say, I know I belong. I am worthy and strong. And so something to kind of stick in your mind that's positive, and being able to recite that over and over. Because at times you'll have participants that, maybe just be struggling a little bit in session and a little bit frustrated because maybe they were trying to whoa their horse or to walk on, and the horse didn't, understand that prompt that they had provided them. And so being able to go over those just short positive statements can help kind of calm and assist with refocusing on what that participant was doing. And so these are nice books to be able to talk about a lot of different things. And so even here we have like Hammerhead. Hammerhead focuses on conflict resolution and then ends with positive affirmations for that as well.
I love
so
that.
Just some books. Those are some of my favorites. So,
and I think obviously kids love stories. Stories are great. Books are great. But I think introducing those positive affirmations, or like I call them mantras, can be so huge. And it's such a little thing. It's only a few words. And like, I have a participant that we say, you can do hard things. And every time she starts to look a little frustrated, or whatever it is, her horse won't whoa, and she, pulls the reins, and we have to try some different things. I just look at her and I say, hey, you can do hard things. And she's like, you're right, I can. And so just kind of finding something to hold on to is really cool. And so having a resource like that already sets that up for you is handy.
Right. So the question, that sometimes you'll get is, that's a book, Kelly. How do I take a book into a writing lesson, right? Or a session? So a little bit more difficult. So this just kind of gives the idea of things that you can kind of utilize at home or at school to continue practicing some of that. But how do you do some of that and bring in some of that positive affirmation in a session? A really neat way to be able to bring in a positive affirmation is to think about it in terms of chain links. Is that an idea that you could utilize during a session? Is at the end of every session, you could have the participant identify something positive or something that they did that they were successful at during that session, or just even have a horse leader identify, something that they did really well. And what you could do is you could take those sheets of paper, you could take and make one link per session, write it on the first link, and then at next session, you do another positive affirmation and you connect that link. And then by the end of a course, you could present all of these positive links in that chain to your participant to be able to show them this is all the hard work that you've done and all the positives. So if you're struggling or you just need kind of, again, another coping mechanism, the child at home could pull out this link and be able to see, wow, I did all this positive every single week to reflect on.
Oh, that's it. So starting that tomorrow. That's amazing. I love that. I have so many kids that would benefit from that. Super cool.
And then it's the nice thing is if you do that at the end of the course and you present them with that, being able to provide kind of, that praise is real and important to assist with that motivation, continue to do this hard work. And the nice thing is let's say that participant, they're not able to return back to, treatment services, then that way they have that tool to be able to reflect on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. You could also do the same thing with ping pong balls and being able to kind of fill somebody's bucket, being able to write that positive. You could use popsicle sticks to be able to put in there. So however you want to kind of, reference that positivity and get creative with that visual aid for that participant. So there's a lot of different ways that you could bring in that positive affirmation.
Love visuals. I'll say it again.
And this is just a start to ways that we can teach self-regulation in treatment sessions. There's a lot more material that I would love to be able to go over today. I know we've given some great resources from books to sensory bottles to chain link positive affirmations to be able to utilize in sessions.
Yeah. So tell me, what diagnoses or folks might this be appropriate for, or might you see this come up with the topic of self-regulation?
Honestly, anybody.
Right.
I think you can utilize this. And so any mental health diagnoses of individuals on the spectrum, as well as other behavioral disorders, you could use it with like an oppositional kind of defiant disorder, just really anybody who, needs assistance being able to calm down, refocusing, problem solving.
Me at like 2:00 in the afternoon when I need motivation.
Right.
Or days where you're having hard days, I need a positive affirmation chain, I think. Well,
Absolutely.
we're excited to have more of you, Kelly. You're a wonderful resource. And so we were just discussing how we are going to do a webinar. So if you haven't checked out the Hetra University webinars yet, please go do that. They're all Path CEU approved. So that's always handy to have. And if you want to dive into some more of these type of topics in more detail, that's a great place to do it. And Kelly and I are going to present on some mental health topics, as well as one that is fear and resistance to the horse. So we might have participants that are either resistant to try it or have trouble with transition or a little bit scared. I think we've all had participants that are like that, but we know that they would benefit tremendously. And Kelly and I are going to help you put some tools in that toolbox. So look forward to that here in the next couple of months. Kelly, do you have anything else that you want to part our audience with today in regards to self-regulation?
I would love to go over, some additional things and do a part 2 for self-regulation, to continuing to identify creative ways to work with participants in session on self-regulation. What I would also, be interested in knowing is if there are any other topics that anybody, out in the audience would like to kind of see a focus on, to, please type that on, put it on Facebook so that way we can see it. And then we can, really kind of focus, and kind of take that direction for what those additional topics that everybody would like to see.
I think part 2 is a fabulous idea. We did kind of what is it, an intro to it today, and we can do maybe some more advanced things in part 2. Yeah. So if you're listening and you are like, yes, you're dying, I want to hear part 2, go to the Not Just a Pony Ride Facebook group, join us, and comment on the post, make your own post, ask us a question. Again, that's just a big forum for all of us to talk and share and request more. So if you have any other mental health topics or things that you want to learn more about, shout them out because we're listening. All right, Kelly, I always end my podcast with the same question. And that question is, why do you keep doing what you do? Why do you keep pursuing on in your journey as a mental health practitioner?
So I keep doing what I do because I truly have a passion for it. And I think with the pandemic, it has increased mental health and individuals needing to focus on those health and wellness techniques daily, and how important it is. I mean, for everybody to be able to function. I think there's so much stress coming at everybody every single day, and focusing on mental health really is my why. And so I've seen so many people benefit from services. And I think an amazing service that Hetra does, and really working, with the human horse interaction, is an opportunity that communities don't get an opportunity, to kind of experience, because typically mental health is focused on, outpatient residential settings and in-home services. And so this is a very unique way to have an incredible connection with an animal and to be able to experience all the possibilities just in a different therapeutic environment. And so I continue doing it. And honestly, since, being able to have this opportunity and co-facilitate and focus on mental health, that it just gives me that much more motivation and drive to figure out how we can be creative to help with the needs of anybody coming in to services, and being flexible and the ability to adapt, and just being open to say, hey, how we used to do things, we can't always do that way anymore. And so how can we continue doing this work and really show the joy and that passion, that we have and that I have for mental health. And so I just always look for, new and creative ways. And I love it. It's my why. It truly is. And regardless of what capacity, it just gives me that motivation to get up every single day, because even if I can make one small step or make the difference in somebody's life, that's the difference in somebody's life.
Mm-hmm. Well, I literally cannot say enough about how blessed Hetra is to have you share your why with us. Sharing that creative energy and that passion to help people. That's exactly the person that belongs at Hetra, and we're glad to have you. And we're glad that you're sharing it with our audience too. So thank you for being willing to do that. Well, we will not hear the last of you, Kelly B. You will be back and and both here on the podcast and in a webinar. So just kind of a plug for generalities. If you don't have a mental health practitioner as a part of your team right now, I just want how amazing that having someone on your team that specializes in mental health can do. I mean, we do, just to keep you guys in the loop. So Kelly co-facilitates, you heard her say that. So it's usually an OT or PT, or it could be speech therapist as well that's practicing. And then Kelly is helping co-facilitate a lot of those lessons. So it's a super easy way to integrate some really awesome services. So if you have any questions about how to integrate mental health into your facility, shout those questions out too. All right. Well, thank you so much, Kelly. We appreciate you being on today.
Thank you.
We'll see you again soon.
Perfect. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to another episode. Until the next one launches, stay connected to our community by joining the Not Just a Pony Ride Facebook group. There, we share exclusive educational content, answer your questions, and review new and exciting developments for the EAS community. Don't forget, if you have suggestions for future episode topics or a lead on a great guest that you think our audience would enjoy, click on the link in the show notes or visit us at hetrauniversity.org. This podcast is presented by Hetra University, an educational arm of the Heartland Equine Therapeutic Riding Academy. Hetra University's mission is to provide high-quality educational offerings to our participants and the EAS community. If you'd like to help us work toward our mission, you can make a donation by visiting us online at hetra.org. Again, I can't thank you all enough for helping Hetra change lives one stride at a time.